Ladies and gentlemen, again, welcome to our Accountants EMPIRE MasterClass CEO series. And it's something that I can remember actually chatting to Sam. I'll introduce Sam very, very shortly, but I remember chatting to Sam about this last year about I was going to introduce my CEO series. And this is a brand new series where, to all of you that are joining us for the first time, if you don't know who I am, my name's Paul Jantz. We've been bringing a lot of different content out, more and more content. And this is something that I was really keen to start up our CEO series, where every single month I get to chat to a brand new CEO, a chief executive in the role of leading a big company. And I've got a whole heap of fantastic guests over the next few months. Now, if you are joining us for the first time, thanks to Professional Partners Education. It's really important I mention them and our supporters, Hall Chadwick, Profit Master, iKeep, Corporate Lifeline, and Lloyd's. That's probably a really, really important one. Look, today I'm probably going to, again, talk from a personal point of view. I want to sort of run through a few different things, because the point of bringing this to all of you that are online is this is about education. It's about learning. And one of the key things that I feel that there's good leadership out there and there's poor and bad leadership out there. And I'm sure that all of us have probably seen a little bit of that. And that's probably what makes us better people, better leaders as we continue to learn. And that's what this series is about. So ideally, if you can sit back in the next 45 to 50 minutes and take away 1 to 2 things, I put up 2 fingers then, but 1 or 2 things that you can take away, fantastic. Take notes. This is being recorded, so it'll be uploaded to our YouTube channel as well for all team members to have a look at as well. And this is about you guys. So, you know, CPD, it's about us continuing to bring some fantastic content so that all of you can learn. And that's what I hope to bring you guys over the next 6 months, 12 months and beyond. You do have your chat bars at the bottom there. So please be interactive. Use the chat bar, use the Q&A. We'll go for about 45 to 50 minutes. We'll take questions if you've got any. And I'm going to go through a whole heap of things. Sort of Sam and I have known each other for quite a long time now, and he is one of the guys that I look up to as a mentor and the type of person that has led a fantastic company and also in this listed public space. So we've got a bit to get through. Now, let me introduce you to him. He's my special guest. I've mentioned him before, but Chief Executive of Reckon, Sam Allert. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks very much, PJ. Happy to be here. Really appreciate the invite. And as you say, hopefully I can give value to your audience today. 1 or 2 things. I won't hold up my fingers, but one or 2 things, if we can, in our discussion, share some tips or advice, then that'd be great.
Yeah, brilliant. It's funny when you are live and then you realise that I said 1, but I'm putting up 2, and it's like, I'm going to go back and just tidy that up a little bit. So, yeah, great. And mate, thank you for being my first guest as well. I think I mentioned this to you maybe last October even, and yet it's come to life, which is fantastic.
Yes. No, I feel privileged to be your first guest, mate. Hopefully I can live up to it. And hopefully you're starting well and you keep the good guests going.
Yes, thank you. Now, before we get into the show, I want to sort of paint a picture of, and we went through, I think maybe even last week, we spoke a little bit about the current performance of Reckon. So I want to just touch on some of the numbers, because I might have shared this in some of the socials and maybe all of you out there heard it, saw it. But if you haven't, Sam leads a public company with, let me just share some of the stats. Sure. 100 mil market cap, about 15 mil of debt, so about 120 mil of enterprise value. You might even sort of want to touch on that a little bit. About $70 million of recurring income, which is, if you can build a model that's got that recurring income, brilliant. And about 30 million of EBITDA. Is that all correct?
That is all correct. Yep. And out of the EBITDA, even after development, all of our investment, about 8 or 9 of free cash flow. So real cash generating tech company, which is sometimes a bit different to the norm.
Yeah, true. Because I suppose, well, you're right. And I suppose if you're starting up, you know that, and we've dealt with a lot of startups in this world as well, where they suck up a lot of cash, don't they?
Absolutely. It's all about,
they're trying to get to that model. They're trying to get to the model of recurring income, because it continually hits the bank account. It's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, mate, you are, and you sort of mentioned it before, you're a tech giant, massive growth sector. How do you feel about those sort of numbers when I sort of mentioned 100 mil market cap and 30 million of EBITDA? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, good question. First of all, we'll pull you up on tech giant. I wouldn't say we're a tech giant yet. I think we're a very solid tech company, but watch this space. We definitely want to be a tech giant. But I feel a number of things, particularly proud. I'm very proud of the business I work for, proud of the team I lead, proud of the results that we're getting, proud of the clients that we support. So definitely, and very proud of the opportunity to be chief executive of a listed company. There's no question that I had that, what do they call it, imposter syndrome when I first put the green jacket on or took the reins. But I feel very comfortable leading the business now. So I feel very proud with our results. That said, you touched on something there about market cap. There's one thing that burns me, and it's not my primary focus because it should just be an outcome of running a good business. But we are a listed company. Ultimately, we do want to return, good returns for shareholders. But if you look at our market cap on any valuation of a tech company, we are undervalued, in my opinion. I better put that big disclaimer up there. In my opinion, as CEO. Yeah. I do feel we're undervalued. Yeah, as you say, 70 mil of recurring revenue, 30 mil of EBITDA, cash flow generating, and a market cap of 120. It's not even 2 times revenue. And there's software companies out there trading at 9, 10, 20 times revenue. Mm-hmm. So I'm very proud of the business we run, and that's my number one focus. And I'm very pleased that as CEO and a director, that's my obligation, run the business in the best interest of the business. The one thing I've got a real burning desire to see change, which I know I can only impact by running a good business, is I'd love to see proper recognition on the share market for the reckon value.
Interesting. Yeah. So let's get into that a little bit. Now, I suppose before Xero came along, Maya was the leader. Fair to say, reckon APS always been running around number 2. You took over, you just mentioned you put on the green jacket, probably 3.5 years ago as Group CEO?
3.5 years ago as Group CEO, yeah.
So mate, tell us about what's your number one priority? I know we've just spoken about the numbers, and obviously very important to have those sort of numbers, and you spoke about how proud you are about that. What's your number one priority? And when you took over, because I suppose this is an important one, did you actually change anything from the outgoing CEO?
Yeah, great question. I'll come to that second bit last, if I can.
Sure.
What's my number one priority? Look, good leading. We at Reckon, we've distributed brands like Intuit QuickBooks for many years. So we really built that QuickBooks brand until we split that partnership and developed our own Reckon One product. Certainly with APS. As you say, when we were QuickBooks and APS, we were a clear number 2 to MYOB. So providing small business accounting and payroll, practice management and compliance for firms that are like on your webinar. And there's no question that Xero came along and disrupted our industry and MYOB and Reckon alike. And in many ways, we should thank them, right? There's no better way than getting a kick up the arse or a bolster to do better than someone coming in and really just changing the thing. They changed the whole model of almost selling software in this space. So what we've been on is a massive journey of taking a very solid, safe, strong performing, great client base, great team, but on-premise tech company to a fast growing, well, it's actually, that's less important, but to a cloud first tech company. So we've had a massive investment in that transition. And fortunately, before I stepped in as CEO, I've been with the company over 20 years. So it wasn't as if I came in externally, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, by the way. Many people probably know me and say maybe they should have gone external. But the reality is I came in with a lot of industry knowledge, a lot of Reckon knowledge, a lot of domain expertise. So I knew the business and I knew I didn't have to change everything. And in fact, there was a lot we were doing right. I just wanted to be crystal clear for the whole market, for the team, for our clients, what our direction was, what our strategy was. And that is to transition all of our products into better versions of the product in a cloud environment. The reality is it is very tough. It's not impossible, but it's very tough to sell software in any industry today if you're not in the cloud. But at the same time, all of our clients and some of them are big 4 accounting practices and top 10 accounting practices.
Yep.
We're running our on-prem products, and they're compliance products. They're compliance products like payroll, tax, general ledger. So it's not as if you can stop one and just release the other. So we've had a real big focus on a safe, fast transition from an on-prem business to a cloud business. That's been the priority. You ask about me stepping into CEO. I'm a front of house kind of guy, and that would be the only difference, I think, or the main difference with my predecessor. The board, and Clive's still on our board, and he's a mentor to me. But the board really realised that we needed someone who was going to be more on the ground, more out there in front of clients, speaking with the team, and leading the business. And that, I would say, is my strength. And really, that's what I came in and did. I got clear, first of all, what is that strategy? How we're going to execute on it? And then it's about communicating it. And you can't do that once, PJ, as I'm sure you're aware. Mm-hmm. You've got to communicate it over and over and over again. Where are we going? Where are we succeeding? Where do we need to pivot again and do something different?
Yeah, well said. And I think, again, to pardon me, to everyone online, like I just wrote down about 4 things just then with regards to transitioning to the cloud, because obviously that was something that you, yes, it came in from outside, but you had to move with the times, really, wasn't it? And, back then it was one of those things that, what does this look like?
I'll share a war story. Well, we'll call it a war story. The reality is we knew about the cloud. We were already developing in the cloud, looking at the cloud. We were obviously going too slow for an external company to come in and disrupt our industry and succeed the way Xero has. And again, credit to them. I take nothing away from them. But we knew about cloud. Cloud wasn't new. They came in and changed. Not only they had new technology, they changed the model of how you distribute, sell, market technology in this space.
Yes. Yeah, very true. And the second point that I wrote down was the importance of you coming in and being more, I'll call it hands-on. You spoke about clients and team and the importance of actually taking that and being able to communicate. So again, keywords to me. So if everyone's taking some notes here, team, clients, communicate. Because you're right, there's at different times you're going to be in front of your people and they are going to hear what you say very differently. Is that fair to say?
Yep, absolutely. Everyone
I'll reiterate that point.
There's so many different ways of learning and hearing a message. So some people are very visual. They'll be listening to us, missing a lot of points. But if we had a bunch of statistics and slides up, they'd be absorbing it. Other people, if we had the slides up, we'd be losing them and they'd be much more engaged in a general conversation. So you've got to know that no matter what method of communicating you're using, once is not enough. We've got to go and share that message over and over and over again.
And do you tend to do that with a mixture? Obviously, you've got a big team there. So how many direct reports?
I got 5 direct reports.
Okay. How many people in total?
350.
Okay, that's an interesting stat in itself. So 5 direct reports for 350 people.
Yeah, I read a book and I thought about it earlier. I can't even remember the book, but if you search it, I think there was a stat about you shouldn't have more than 5 direct reports. And in fact, if you want to make decisions, you shouldn't have more than 7 people in a room.
Correct.
So it's something I've worked on. We do have management meetings, what we call the executive or senior management team. It is more than 7 people. But what I did is I didn't take them all as direct reports to me. I work very closely with them. But for example, we've got a general manager of sales. The general manager of client success is in that exec management team, but ultimately she reports into the general manager of sales.
Right. Yeah, clever. And look, and they're the key things, I suppose, when you sort of look at those numbers. And I think I've read that book as well from memory, and it's about capacity and how much time you can actually give to your people to guide them.
Yeah.
The question I was going to ask was, when you do that on a continual basis, and you're right, some are visual and some are more analytical, and how do you tend to do that? Do you cover most of that?
I don't think there's any perfect methodology. I tell you what we do. For the last 2 years, I've spent way too much time staring at a screen, talking to a camera, and presenting slides.
Hello.
Yeah. What we used to do, the only difference, and in many ways, I should acknowledge that in many ways, the forced remote work and everyone going on to Zoom or Teams actually helped us communicate with our business. We've got big offices all around Australia, but particularly in New Zealand. We've also got a US operation, but we do run that a little bit more standalone. But particularly Australia and New Zealand, what we did in the past, our head office is here in North Sydney, where I am today. We had circa 150 people here. Then we might have another 60 people around Australia, another 50 people in New Zealand, roughly. When we would run team meetings, we would all gather in a big communal area in North Sydney and have a little camera and a mic on the presenters. Great experience for everyone who's lucky enough to be in our head office. Horrible experience for everyone who's remote. That's the reality. And we kept trying to get better tech and better ways of engaging with the remote team. I mean, particularly if they ever tried to ask a question, a faint voice would come through the computer in a room with 100 people. So in some ways, the fact that now we jump on to a monthly, we call it a global team meeting, everyone's there. It's amazing watching the participants tick up when you first log in. And we would have over 150 attendees at that. Everyone's camera's on, unless they're walking or something, which we encourage. Then you can just see so many faces, and that's how we present our update. We also do a monthly newsletter, but like any good newsletter, it often goes out late or we're scrambling for content. And the other thing that I would say we do is implement new technology. Many years ago, we put in Slack. Slack's not the only one to do this, but Slack is basically an instant messaging tool. You can create channels, public, private, etc. I think that's been a huge improvement to our instantaneous communication across our teams.
Yeah, and I think that's look. I've used Slack a number of times as well, but I think whether it's Slack or WhatsApp or there's email, there's so many different communications now. It does get a little bit overwhelming as well with the amount of different comms that you can get. Then you get text messages coming through, and but I do like, I've always liked Slack as, again, transferring files or whatever it may be that instantaneously, and it does work quite well. Well, let's get into strategy for a minute. So talk me through, from a strategy perspective, who sets the strategy and how do you go about executing the strategy?
Great question. Great question. We've been publicly listed. The right answer to that question is the board sets the strategy. So I'll give you Sam Allert's answer. Look, the board definitely contributes and signs off on the strategy, but I'm a huge believer in empowering the team. I need to feel empowered myself, always have. So I'm a huge believer in empowering the team. If the team, and I'm talking the management team, if the wider management team is not contributing and working on setting that strategy, they're never going to be as connected to it, in my opinion. So very much, I would say that the people on the ground leading the business, leading the team, speaking to clients, writing the code, our exec management team sets the strategy. It is, of course, forecast, budgeted, formally signed off and approved by the board. And let's face it, if the board don't approve the management strategy, we're not able to go ahead with it, being a publicly listed company. But the reality is, I think the people on the ground, the people leading the team, need to set that strategy. To your second point, who executes it? 100%, it's that executive management team. And so they need to have contributed to the strategy to really believe it and own it, and then go and deliver on it.
So, in effect, buying.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. So you mentioned a really key word, empowerment. And I think that's, being involved with a number of different companies, running different companies, and also working for different companies, that's a key element, I think. And for everyone listening to this, what's empowerment to you, and how do you go about doing that?
Yeah. Empowerment, I think, is believing. So empowerment is someone believes in what they're doing and feels like they've got autonomy and real influence over executing that.
Okay.
So for example, I mean, what's some very old, the whole management versus leadership.
Yes.
Yeah. So management is telling them what to do. So PJ, go and do this, execute on it, report to me weekly and come back and tell me how you've done. That's not empowering for you. Leadership is that we collaborated on the project in the first place. So you felt some ownership to Sam, we've been talking about this. This is what I want to go and do. And then I go, absolutely, you go and do that. Now, how do I help? And then you say, you know what? Get out my way. And I've got team members who might say that. Other team members will say, I'm going to need you in everything, right? So how do I help? And then you will say to me, you know what, Sam, I'm going to just update you. Can I go away and do this? And I'm going to update you in a couple of weeks. And then I'll show you where we're at. That's empowerment. It's really giving you permission, ownership, flexibility, and control of the project to run it your way. And without that, the reality is, one, I think without that, there'd be too many excuses. So if something went wrong, you could say, well, it was this person's fault, or you told me to do that, Sam. And let's face it, no one wants to consistently turn up and just be told what they're going to do, 9 to 5, 8 to 6, whatever, and go and do it. They want that empowerment.
Yeah, look, I'd agree. And what a great little example there of the collaborative approach to maybe solving a problem or a challenge or whatever it may be. But I think that collaborative approach is very, very good. Yeah.
I think what's important there, I mean, I share, sometimes I've got an idea, a strategy. I mean, you ask about who sets the strategy. I think more than anyone, going for a run or in the shower on holiday, going to sleep, I'm thinking of what we've got to do. So I definitely turn up to a meeting or something with one of my managers with a set outcome in my mind. The difference is I could walk in and say, hey, PJ, I thought about this last night, go and do. Or I share it in an idea that I'm very comfortable as a leader to be challenged on.
Right.
Now, that's the difference. I'm not sitting there manipulating and selling them to get to my outcome, but I believe in what I'm suggesting, so I'm going to fight to convince them to get to that outcome, right? And I really think that's a difference. I could absolutely use the CEO tag and say, well, PJ, you're going to do it that way because that's what I've said. That's not going to work consistently and effectively.
Yeah, good point. Now, I think we've been through a pretty tough, interesting, I don't know what word to use actually, probably both.
Yeah.
Over the last probably couple of years. Yeah, exactly. So, and sort of one of the words that continues to come up is resilience, and how we go about continuing to build that. Our accounting industry has definitely stood tall throughout that as well. I think to most of the firms on the line now, there's, without you guys being there to support your clients personally and in business, with the work that you had to do and how you need to hold their hand through a lot of that process.
Yeah,
it's been pretty bloody tough. How do you go about implementing and even showing resilience?
Yeah. First of all, yes, what a tough couple of years. Look at you clearing your throat. I'm clearing my throat. Poor Brookie's got COVID on the call. We're not through it. I saw a great meme the other night that said, now I've just forgotten it, but I'm looking forward to some precedented times. And I remember early in sort of 2020, how often I use the word unprecedented for our team, for everyone. This is unprecedented, so we've got to adapt. Well, geez, haven't we had some more unprecedented times in terms of weather, floods, everything? Like it just keeps coming up. You just had to look at the swell in Sydney recently, knocking out Bondi and Bronte. And anyway, looking forward to some precedented times. But to your word resilience, I mean, it just, look, to me, I mean, resilience is about experiencing stress and being able to get back up. And I think that the only way you can do that in all areas of your life is to be comfortable with who you are, to have 2 feet solidly on the ground. And I was only talking about this with a team in Reckon the other day. You cannot be strong only in work. Yeah. If I've got challenges in my health, in my home relationships, with my children, with my parents, right? The reality is you get something knocking you at work, you are not going to be resilient because you're not strong with who you are. So I personally do a lot of work and think a lot about all aspects of life. Here's a tip for people if they haven't seen it before. There's something called the Wheel of Life. You can Google it and a million examples will come up. The Wheel of Life is about goal setting, which I'm also a big believer in. But the Wheel of Life says we've all got spokes, 5 or 7 spokes, and everyone can have different spokes. But there's a lot of consistency. There'd be work, family, health, friendships, spirituality, financial, etc. You set your spokes in the wheel, and then you rate yourself out of 10 on all of them. And the utopia is that it's a circle. Mm. The reality is it spikes up and down like that. And the reason I think that's important, you talk about resilience. There's been, for any business leader over the last 2 years, there's been some very scary times. I literally remember in March 2020 being at Melbourne in a conference. I was on stage, I was presenting, rubbing shoulders with 120 people. There was a few jokes from the MC about this thing called COVID and fist pumping. 2 days later, I was back in our Sydney office, meeting with the CTO, talking about in the extreme event, we had to shut the office down. 24 hours later, everyone working from home. Now, I don't think you can handle those kind of things if you're not got 2 feet on the ground in all aspects of life. The reality is, I think the stress, and I'm using work as an example, the other is true as well. You can't go home and be the best father, husband, partner, brother, child. If work's stressing you out, it's going to be difficult. Mm. So the first thing on resilience is, I think, is having balance, trying to have equilibrium across all those spokes. No one's perfect, so I certainly don't have that circle at all. But the awareness of that circle helps me so that we'll stick with work. If something does happen at work and it scares the shit out of me, or it stresses me, or it worries me, I'm resilient in the fact that I can get back up really quickly. I do handle disasters or crises really well. Sometimes I think they bring out the best in myself or other people. It's not a state that I like to operate in, but you can see some people shine, and I think it's because overall they're strong, they're centered, and I think that to me is resilience. How do you train it? I think you just acknowledge it. We talk a lot about goal setting. We've got a bunch of different mentoring programs in Reckon, so I've spoken about what I just spoke about to the wider team. And then I think the only way you can show resilience is to show up, basically. Mm. And if there's a disaster, don't be, the first off the ship, so to speak, the first off the sinking ship, or expecting someone else to take care of a client's challenging problem. You've got to be in there fronting it up.
Yeah. Fantastic little and that wheel, it's a funny thing. I can remember doing it years ago, and now I use different elements to get that balance. But you're right, you do it initially and you go, you're doing it out of 10 and you go, yeah, that looks nothing like a wheel. That's not round.
No. Exactly.
But I think your key point there was it brings awareness to maybe where your focus needs to be. Yep. And I think that's the one thing with all of us. You're right. With the life we're living at the moment, and the kids, and they're growing up and they're challenging us every day as parents. You're right. That balance is just so important. And that's, even me, I've chosen to do more with them and less of other things. Certainly work as an example. So that's more important to me. So getting that balance and being aware of it is really, really important. So great little tip for everyone.
I don't mind sharing it with PJ, and I love that. And you and I have a great friendship. We've known each other for so many years. So I'm aware of that with you, and I think that's awesome, right? That family focus. For me, what I realised is that I had no hobbies, and I wasn't seeing my own friends enough. I was seeing, friends of the family. I was seeing parents of the school kids. But the 2 lowest schools was anything personal friends, mates, people who I love, whether it's going to have a beer. play a game of golf, a game of tennis, going to a game of footy, or having a hobby. And it was just an eye-opener. And just by being aware of it, didn't mean I changed it or fixed it overnight, but I've completely given myself permission to go and try and find a hobby or find something that I'm passionate about and see your mates more. Yeah. And you know what? It's really empowering, because if you do have those challenges, like we're all going to have, there is no one better to talk to than a mate that you've known 5, 10, 15 or 40 years.
Spot on. And again, just sharing very, very quickly, one of the things that I've done over the last probably 5 years, and you have significant moments in life that push you going towards that way, is I've taken out all the toxicity.
Yeah.
So therefore, just don't allow it to come in. We know there's people that's toxic in our lives. Come out. And it's about spending quality time with the people you do want to spend time with. So just little things like that, which give you that balance. Drama. I can't swear on this. Who needs drama?
No one needs drama.
I would have got a few good, interesting comments, but that's right. So I think, it's important that balance is so important. So yeah, absolutely well said.
Yep.
Mate, you touched on people before. You touched on, your direct reports. You even spoken about and this is probably a good one to even talk about, because just before we went live, just so everyone is aware, we were talking about how people are starting to come back, and how your people, you used to come into the office and there was 6 in there, and now there's probably circa 40 in there.
Yeah.
Just touch on that for a second in terms of how important that is to have people back into the office as we start to get back to some sort of normality. And I don't know what normal looks like anymore, so it's interesting.
No, you're right. And there's going to be different views on this. So I, as always, I can only speak from my view. So I think it's good to tell a story. So when that day in March, when all of a sudden we're planning for a full remote workforce, was scary. Is the system going to hold up? Are the team going to be okay? Are we going to be able to run the business? What is probably one of my my proudest moments leading the company was the way our culture stood up. And I'm famous for saying to the team, we are not a complete remote workforce. I don't ever want to be. We haven't been. We're not a complete remote workforce. At the same time, COVID's showing us that we can operate the business remotely. So we don't have to be a 5-day in the office workforce either. So it gives us choice and flexibility. But the thing that really shone in those early COVID days was our culture. And it couldn't come just from me, because I was sitting at home myself. It couldn't come just from the management team, but the team starting up support channels like, are you homeschooling your kids? Let's all chat about the challenges. Are you getting your fitness enough in your local area and not going to a gym? Let's share cooking. We had all these different groups start from different people in the business to support the team.
Clever.
Where we're at now, I don't mind sharing. I think if you serve, well, not I think, we've surveyed the team throughout. Once they got a taste of remote working, so working from home, the majority of team members say, we love it, we want to work remotely. That's the reality. And it's a challenge that I and every business leader has, particularly if you feel like we should be back in the office. We've just started returning to the office in a hybrid way. And I've got to tell you, the energy out there today was great. It's one of the biggest groups of team, probably 45 people, the banter, the chatter, the collaboration. I loved it. I'm in the office nearly every day, but there might be only half a dozen of us some days. So it's very, very quiet. So for me, I think that for Reckon, it's definitely going to be a hybrid approach. We've always had flexible work. We employ people all over the world. We've got people working in Malaysia for us. We've always had remote work as a concept. We also travel. I'm sure a lot of your listeners travel, and the ability to log in, sit on a webinar, or even run a webinar from a hotel room. So we know technology stands up, but ultimately there's too much, in my view, for Reckon and for humanity in a way. We need social interaction. We need to see people. We need to get out of our homes. We need to get out, socialize, communicate, and build those relationships that you can't just build over a screen. So getting back to the office is very, very important to us. But again, not 5 days a week, everyone in the office all the time. We'll definitely be a hybrid workforce, and we've got to be flexible and see how the team respond.
Yeah, well said, well said. It's a funny one as we clear our throat again. I usually try and put it on mute, sorry. Because I can remember, was it a couple of months ago, I had a chat to the CEO of Findex, and
Yes.
Spiro was saying to me that, Paul, I've got all these suits and I no longer wear them, because we've even gone from a suited type of environment now where I just wear a jacket and a casual pair of pants and a shirt. And again, things have changed, haven't they?
So much so that the wool industry is now developing leisure wear, because they were so reliant on producing suits that has gone out, male and female suits that has gone out of fashion. And what's come in fashion is leisure wear. So watch this space for full wool, 100% wool leisure wear.
100% active wear. Interesting.
Yes.
Can you sum up in one word, obviously team, is there one word that you would say that your team members need to have, like in terms of when you're looking at people and when you've got your people? Is there one word that you can sum up? One word?
If we're looking for people, we want a go-getter.
A go-getter. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Someone who's gonna go get some. We do play against some tech giants.
Yes.
We're a smaller business with smaller budgets. We've got to be creative. We've got to be innovative. We've got to play above our size. So everyone contributes to that across reckon. So that'd be the first word that comes up. I think team-oriented. Here's an example. Only last week, HR and a particular manager of a team were talking to me saying, we've got two candidates that are polar opposite. Yeah. They said, we've got one guy who is so qualified for the role, it's not funny. And yeah, highly qualified. We're not sure he'd be a good fit for the team. We've got another person who would be a great fit, but does not have near the qualifications or experience as this other person. Who do you think we took?
The one that was less qualified.
Yeah. And when I was talking to them, and it was, I don't want to downplay it, because talent is important, right? Yeah. Experience is important, but it was a no-brainer for me. I said, take them immediately. I didn't even hesitate. And the point was, we are experts in our industry, so we can teach someone technology, accounting, support, sales. We can teach people finance, marketing, all those skills. But you can't teach someone their personality. I mean, you can develop it. Yes. And you can encourage it, but people come with their own personality and life experience and filters. So we definitely chose the person who was going to fit our culture first, and then we go and upskill them.
It's a good point. It's a really good point, because I suppose I always used to use the word of attitude. Do you have the right attitude? Because you're right, you can train and you can develop, you can send people on courses, and there's coaches and there's mentors. And I thought we've got a bit of time to talk about that, because I know it's important to you. We can do all of that. But if you find the person with the wrong attitude, they could also kill your culture.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Mate, let's talk the importance of, and I know no one likes to do this, but let's talk about failure and how, I think nobody likes to fail, but there's obviously a lot of things that you can learn from failure. How important is it, do you feel, to deal with failure? How important is it to fail?
I wouldn't know, PJ. I've never failed.
Response.
Don't be silly. Mate, failure is super important. I would say this. I don't think of failure as I've got to go bankrupt or I've got to cripple a business, right? You know how there's a lot of books out there that would say you got to go bankrupt, got to be bankrupt 3 times before you're going to make your fortune. I'm not a believer of that. I don't think you've got to fail that hard. Everyone makes mistakes. So as soon as you think failure, there's mistakes, errors, bad decisions. It's critical, because we've got to learn. We've got to be realistic. if anyone thinks that they've never made a mistake or failed, then they're clearly they're just so out of touch, they're the wrong person, they won't be at record. So we embrace and encourage making mistakes and failing. It's not easy, and I don't want to downplay it, but it does come back to that resilience example you mentioned before. It's okay to make a mistake, provided you learn from it and go again. And in fact, one thing that I would say I'm good at is I make decisions, and I don't procrastinate too long. If we need to make a call, I make a call. And if 2 weeks or 2 months or a year later, we look back and we go, Sam, that was actually the wrong call, I don't just stick to it. We make a different call. And that is empowering. And I hope that if everyone just embraces that attitude to go, make a mistake, because you can make another decision.
Yes.
Don't, you're not going to, some mistakes are bigger than others and some failures are bigger than others, obviously, but you shouldn't even fear those. Make the mistake so we can learn from it and then say, actually, I've got to get on and improve it. And I've made some howlers.
Yeah, brilliant. And thanks for sharing and the honesty in that as well. Mate, if you had to look at good or great leadership and maybe some not so good, let's call it, if you had a top 3 things of what not to do and top 3 things of what to do, putting you on the spot here, what would be your 3 that you can probably share with all of our guests here? And let's start with the positive of what to do.
What to do? I think leadership is about being real, is about connecting with people. Look, it depends on the role. So for me, I have to paint the vision. I have to tell everyone where we're going and why, and then communicate that. That is the role of the CEO, the managing director, the managing principal, the managing partner. Lots of people have a role to play in that. So if you're a partner sitting on this call and you work in a firm with 10 partners, just as important that you set that vision and communicate it. I think that's critically important. And then being open. So being real, maybe is a better way of saying it, that to be approachable. It's not exactly what I want to say, but I can't stand bullies. I just can't fathom it. I never have. But that thought of being a leader or a manager is to be the biggest person in the room, and to get there is to put down others. That is not leadership, right? It's the entire opposite. Be the biggest person in the room by being comfortable with who you are, with your position in the room, and allowing others to shine. And if you can do that, you can create that environment where everyone's got a voice, where everyone's contributing, and you are also contributing in that environment, then that's being a leader. And the only other thing I'll say is in your one-on-one leadership, for me, again, I connect with the whole of the person rather than the person in that specific role at Reckon. Because if we could do that, we're so much more aware of what's happening for the whole of that individual and how to help them be the best they can for their slice of time that they're at Reckon.
Yeah, brilliant. And look, there was just a comment there I wrote down: make others shine.
Yeah,
I think that's such an important point. If you can get yourself to that point that sitting down and working with people, and obviously you've got a lot of people to push that vision through, but you've got your direct reports, and how do I make others shine? So it's not about me, it's about them.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good point to even reflect on sometimes. Do I do that with my children? Do I do that with my partner, my wife, my husband, whatever it may be? Yeah. Do I allow that to happen, or am I just the bully? And that's a good, interesting question to ask yourself.
To help, if this is resonating with someone, there's a lot of evidence now that there's health benefits. It's so rewarding to the individual that helps someone else shine without any being the star themselves, right? That empathy, that support, that if you can really help someone else succeed, there is now proven health benefits that it kicks off certain cortisone and chemicals in our brain that is so rewarding, it's like doing physical exercise.
Interesting. Now, I'm going to get some people to, just because we've gone 12:46, if we've got any questions. I know there was a comment before from Nick that spoke about, let me just quickly reiterate that because it was a good one. Sam may be happy to know that I ran some numbers and reckon is definitely undervalued as a stock at the moment. So in a big way, there you go.
Thanks, Nick. Again, my disclaimer is, in my opinion, and as CEO of the company, I certainly can't encourage or discourage anyone trading our shares.
Yes.
But, well said.
If you've got questions, please drop them into the Q&A or into the chat, and I'll definitely look at that. Mate, look, it's probably a silly question to ask because I probably know the answer, but the importance of let's talk, listen or talk, sort of before we wrap up and we, then we go to a few questions. Are you a listener or a talker? And what's some advice you can give on both?
It's a good question. The reality is I'm a talker and I need to be a better listener. I'm aware of it, so I try very hard to do it. Now, at the same time, so I actually think the research would argue that listening is better. I've learned, that I've got over that imposter syndrome. I've learned that one of my skills, particularly when I'm on song, is taking a message, a story, an important, could be difficult message, and articulating it in a way that people get, all kinds of people, whether it's a team, clients, market as a whole. It's a skill I've got, so I've got to embrace it, not go, hang on, don't be the talker. So I've got comfortable with that, and I am a talker, there's no question. But I'm so aware of the power of listening, and what I would say is that I'm much better at really hearing what people are saying.
Okay.
So it's not just listening and paying lip service, it's actually listening, really hearing what the message is, what the context of what that person is telling me.
Yeah, that's really well said. And I think if anyone wants a challenge out there, one of the challenges that I took on last year was to try and coach an under-10s footy side. I guarantee you none of them listen. And they only want to talk. And they want to tell you how to coach. So it's interesting, again, to challenge yourself to try and get better as a leader, because you've got to be a lot more empathetic, listening. You've got to take their point of view as well as push your point of view across. It's an interesting mindset that has challenged me. And my son's in that side as well. So it's like, okay, interesting. But it helps you in your whole life, I believe, because it's different aspects you take. So, yeah, really.
Children are great educators or teachers in skills we've got to learn.
So true. So true. Let me just check. There's no questions coming through. That's probably a good thing because people are enjoying it, hopefully. But if you do have anything you want to ask Sam, please throw it in there. But, mate, I'm going to look to wrap up. Look, appreciate you coming on here, your comments, your thoughts, the advice, the honesty, the authenticity. It's something that I've always enjoyed in talking to you. I know we've had some great chats, and we probably don't, to be fair, we don't catch up enough, and we say that quite a lot as well. But to all of you that have joined us today, look, thanks for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed what Sam has had to share. I'm just going to quickly jump to some, there's nothing in the Q&A, so that's probably a good thing. Look, again, there's this series is about taking some things away and challenging yourself. So hopefully you've got the ability to do that. Again, I've mentioned that this has been recorded. This will go into our YouTube channel. Take the team through it. This is the beautiful part about this as well, that you don't have to just listen to what we've gone through, but watch it again. Some of the greatest things that I do is to reread or rewatch, and it's a bit like watching a great movie. You can watch it 10 times and pick up 10 different things. So there's always going to be areas there that you can sort of look at this and challenge yourself to become a better leader or a better person, which is what we spoke about at the start.
Maybe even fast forward to the highlights, PJ. Like if you are watching the replay, you can say, I remember when PJ and Sam were discussing this element, I found that valuable. Just go and listen to that 5 minutes again.
Yeah, very, very, very true. So it's there's heaps of things here, and there's going to be look out my next guest. So everyone's sort of into the frame for this. It's the chief executive of Practice Ignition. I think it was. It's now Practice App. I think it is. So Guy Pearson's joining me here for our next show, which is going to be fantastic. It's probably going to be, I think it's early May, around the 5th of May, once we get over school holidays and Easter and so on. And I've also got my next Women in Accounting show coming up soon as well. So look out for the invitation for that. So Sam Allert, thank you for joining us. Thanks for being open. Thanks for being honest, mate. It's always a fantastic chat with you. And
my pleasure.
I'll see you in Sydney next time.
Yes, my pleasure. Thanks very much for the invite. And, I hope someone did take one or two things away.
That's it. Till next time. I'll see you all next time. Thank you very much. Thanks, Sam.
All the best, everyone.
Cheers.